Welcome to the deep dive.
Okay, so the name Jeffrey Epstein, it's just been everywhere for years now, hasn't it? Like this constant hum in the background of public conversation.
It really has. The horror of it all, but also just the endless questions, the theories.
Exactly. It's become this huge narrative, part tragedy, well, just wild speculation sometimes. And honestly, it's tough, really tough to know what's fact and what's just noise.
Yeah, separating the signal from the noise is the challenge.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to cut through as much of that noise as possible. We're going to unpack the latest official conclusions,
Great.
the ones just out from the Justice Department and the FBI in the Epstein case.
Right.
But we're not stopping there. We've also got to look at these findings against, the backdrop of all that public skepticism, the questions that just won't go away, and the reactions people have had. Because you really need both sides to get the full picture here. Absolutely. And to do that, we've pulled together some really interesting sources.
Yeah.
The main one is this internal memo. It's exclusive, and it details the DOJ and FBI findings, their reasoning.
Okay.
But then, to get that full context, we're also looking at investigative reporting around these conclusions, plus, direct reactions from social media, people saying what they think.
Yeah, that raw reaction.
Exactly. And that mixed the official word, the reporting, the public feeling it, gives you this fascinating look at how we all process information today, how things get debated, maybe even resisted.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The headline finding, the core of what the DOJ and the FBI are saying now, it hits on several fronts, doesn't it?
It really does.
They've concluded, flat out, no evidence Epstein blackmailed powerful people. No evidence of that mythical client list everyone talked about.
Right, that list has taken on a life of its own.
Totally. And maybe the biggest one for a lot of people following this, they're officially saying he wasn't murdered. It was suicide. End of story, according to them.
And what's really significant there, I think, is when this is coming out and who it's coming from, considering the political context.
How so?
Well, this is actually the first time the Trump administration has, officially pushed back against so many of those conspiracy theories that were really widespread, especially about his death.
Ah, right. So the administration itself is contradicting a narrative that was, pretty popular in some circles.
Exactly. A sitting administration through the DOJ and FBI directly saying no to a story that had really taken root online. It's kind of a watershed moment, not just for the case, but for seeing how these narratives can shift maybe when people get into power.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so digging into his death, specifically the suicide finding, what evidence are they citing in the memo?
So they point very specifically to video footage from the area around his cell in the Manhattan prison. The report says pretty precisely that this video shows nobody went into that area near his cell between about 10:40 p.m. on August 9th, 2019, that's when he was locked in, and 6:30 a.m. the next morning when they found him.
And what about the claims the video was bad quality or tampered with?
Well, the memo addresses that directly. It says the FBI actually worked on the footage. They enhanced it, increasing its contrast, balancing the color, and improving its sharpness for greater clarity and viewability. That's the quote.
Okay, so they're trying to preempt those criticisms about the video quality.
It seems like it, yeah. Providing a sort of forensic answer to those specific doubts.
And beyond his death, what about the wider network stuff, the blackmail, the client list?
Right, so the memo is explicit on those points, too. It states investigators found no incriminating client list, that specific phrase.
Just not there.
Not according to this review. And also, no credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals. So that whole theory of him controlling people with illicit material, they're saying they didn't find proof.
Okay. And no new investigations coming out of this.
That's the other key part. It says no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So for you listening, that basically means, based on everything they looked at, they didn't find enough legal grounds to start new criminal cases against anyone else connected to Epstein who hasn't already been charged.
Right.
Of course, we have to remember, Ghislaine Maxwell is serving that 20-year sentence for child sex trafficking. So there has been accountability for some involved.
Right. Okay. But, for a lot of people, these official findings, they're just one part of a much bigger, messier picture. And this is where it gets really interesting, I think.
How so?
Well, this definitive statement from the DOJ and FBI, it lands right after we've seen this pretty noticeable shift from some really prominent figures, people who before were actually, fueling some of the conspiracy theories around Epstein.
You mean people who questioned the official story initially?
Exactly. What happens when those voices suddenly find themselves in positions of power looking at the actual files? That shift adds a whole other layer here.
Yeah, it definitely does. You look at someone like Kash Patel, he's now the FBI director. Or Dan Bongino, who's deputy director.
Right, both well-known figures, especially in MAGA circles.
Definitely. And they were among those who, publicly cast doubt on the official story of Epstein's death. Big platforms, lots of influence. And now, as Trump appointees in these top jobs, with access to the whole file, they've both come out and explicitly said Epstein killed himself. Bongino even said, quote, "He killed himself. I've seen the whole file."
Wow. That's quite a reversal.
It's a very public, very definitive reversal, not just a quiet change of mind.
And that's striking because, like you said, the idea that Epstein was murdered to cover up crimes involving powerful people that had become almost like an article of faith online, especially on the right.
It really had. Government officials, celebrities, business leaders. The theory was they were all implicated and he was silenced.
So to have officials who sort of amplified that sentiment now saying the opposite based on the evidence, it creates this really weird dynamic, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It forces you to think about, political messaging versus maybe what the classified information actually says. It's complex.
So if these figures who once shared the skepticism are now saying suicide, how's the broader public reacting? Especially those who really bought into the other narratives.
Well, that leads to the next big question, right? What happens when the official findings just slam head on into these really strongly held public beliefs? Beliefs often nurtured by those same influential figures.
Yeah.
And our sources show there's been significant frustration, even anger, really, from conservative figures about these DOJ FBI conclusions.
Any examples?
Yeah. Representative Anna Paulina Luna from Florida, she put out a statement pretty strongly worded saying, "This is not what we or the American people asked for, and a complete disappointment. Get us the information we asked for."
Wow. Okay, so a feeling of being let down, or that the real information is still being held back?
That's definitely the sentiment.
And you can really feel that when you look at the social media reactions we found. They're pretty intense. Just raw distrust.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like one user, Gunther Eagleman, posted, "My trust in government is at 0. On my desk and truck full," is what we were told. The lies are blatant. Someone has some explaining to do. People have to go to jail. You can just hear the anger.
Yeah, that's palpable. Referencing past promises, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And another one, Mike Engelman, said something similar. "We were told to be patient. The justice was coming. The Epstein files and list would be made public." Now, the DOJ and FBI reportedly say no client list exists. Pam Bondi should resign or be fired. She lied. This is not justice.
So direct accusations against officials tying it back to that expectation of a list.
And the disappointment even hits, previous political promises directly. This user, Stone Delta 1966, wrote, "My trust is dwindling. He is the one that made the promises that all of the corruption would be exposed. If he cannot keep a promise that has an island and a plane, how is he going to keep all of the other promises?"
Oof. Yeah, that's pointing the finger right at the top, based on expectations set earlier.
Right. And then another user, Candy, was questioning Pam Bondi's role and suggesting Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were just playing a game. So even their reversals aren't being trusted by everyone.
No, it sounds like the skepticism runs really deep for some. It shows how entrenched those alternative narratives became. People aren't letting go easily, even with these official findings.
Stark reminder, yeah.
And all that public reaction, that focus on promises and who knew what, it inevitably circles back to another really persistent part of this whole story, the Trump-Epstein connection itself.
Right. That specific relationship just keeps coming up, doesn't it? Fueled by, a mix of actual history and ongoing speculation.
Definitely. And it just flared up again recently, quite dramatically.
You mean the Elon Musk thing?
Exactly. When Elon Musk just came out and accused Trump of being in the Epstein files, that statement blew up, obviously, and put that whole connection right back in the spotlight.
And Trump denied it pretty quickly, right? Through his lawyer.
Yeah, through David Schoen, who, interestingly, also represented Epstein at one point. Schoen put out a statement denying it for Trump.
And then Musk deleted the accusation.
He did. Deleted that and some related posts and put out a short statement saying he went too far, which, just added another strange twist to it all.
Yeah, the accusation and then the quick retraction. Very weird.
But that whole episode just highlights the historical stuff that keeps people curious,
Yeah.
It's known that Trump and Epstein were acquaintances back in the 90s, moved in the same New York social circles, went to the same parties.
Right.
And there was that claim Epstein made to Michael Wolff back in 2017, where Epstein apparently said he used to be Trump's closest friend.
Which sounds pretty provocative.
It does, but then you have to balance that against what Trump himself said in 2019 after Epstein died. He said he was not a fan, hadn't spoken to him in maybe 15 years.
And that he'd banned him from his resorts?
Right, claimed he'd barred Epstein from his places back in the early 2000s because of Epstein's earlier legal issues. So It's a complicated picture, nuanced, contradictory sometimes, and Democrats, especially, keep pushing for more details on that relationship.
Okay, so with all this public anger, this deep distrust, these questions about Trump and others that just linger, why aren't we seeing more documents released? What's the official line from the DOJ and FBI on releasing more Epstein material? Why hold back if people want answers?
Well, the memo actually gives a pretty clear and quite firm explanation for why they're saying no further disclosure right now.
Okay, what's the reason?
They basically outline two main things. First, a lot of the material deals directly with child sexual abuse, graphic, disturbing details about the victim.
Right, protecting victims.
Exactly. And second, releasing certain information could apparently expose innocent people not accused of anything to public allegations of wrongdoing just by association or how the info is presented.
Collateral damage, sort of.
Kind of. And the memo has this very direct quote. Through this review, we found no basis to revisit the disclosure of those materials and will not permit the release of child pornography.
Okay. It's unambiguous.
Very. It suggests they see it as a balancing act, public demand for transparency versus, the legal and ethical need to protect victims, avoid more harm, and shield innocent parties caught up in the data. It seems rooted in victim privacy laws and ethics.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, our listener? Where does this leave us? We've got these very definitive official findings on one side, suicide, no list, no blackmail.
Right. The official conclusion.
And then on the other side, this really deep public skepticism, people feeling let down by promises, maybe amplified by certain voices, and this gut feeling that there has to be more, that the full story isn't out. It's a real tension, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And I think what this case really throws into sharp relief is this huge challenge we have now in how we all process information, especially today, with instant news, endless commentary, and all these alternative narratives so easily available.
Yeah.
When official findings, even with evidence laid out, clash so hard with beliefs people hold really deeply, beliefs maybe built up over time, encouraged by figures they trust, then, well, trust in the institutions themselves gets pretty shaky.
It makes you question how you decide what's true.
Exactly. It forces you, maybe all of us, to think hard about how we decide what to believe, and maybe more importantly, who we trust when information is coming at us from so many different, often conflicting directions. This whole Epstein saga, it's almost like a case study for the struggle over facts in our world today.
Yeah, it really is. So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on after this deep dive. In this age of rapid-fire information, and maybe growing skepticism towards authority, how do these official conclusions actually land against those deeply embedded public narratives, especially the ones pushed by politicians or online groups? What does this whole long, painful Epstein controversy really tell us about the future of trust? Trust in government, trust in media, maybe even trust in the idea that we can agree on a basic set of facts. It's a huge question. It goes way beyond just this one case, right?
Yeah.
It's about how we all stay informed together.